I'm Diana, and I never thought I'd be telling this story. Growing up, life seemed pretty normal. It was just me, my older brother Jack, and our parents in a modest house on Maple Street. Mom stayed home, living off some inheritance money, while Dad worked his ass off as a sales manager at Burke's Building Supplies. We weren't rolling in dough, but we got by okay. Back then, Mom and Dad tried to treat us equally. At least that's what I thought. They saved up for both our college funds, pinching pennies where they could. When Jack graduated high school, our parents threw him a big bash. Fast forward a few years, and it was my turn to head off to college. No party this time, just a quiet dinner at home. I drove off feeling, I don't know, relieved maybe? Like I could finally breathe without Jack's shadow looming over me. College was a whole new world. I made friends, joined the debate team, even dated a bit. I'd Skype home every now and then. I'd try to tell them about my own stuff, but their eyes would glaze over. It was like they were just waiting for their turn to talk about Golden Boy Jack again. For years flew by, and before I knew it, I was heading home with a shiny new degree in my back pocket. I was ready to take on the world, maybe move to the city, and start my career. But the moment I walked through that front door, lugging my suitcases behind me, I knew something was different. The house reeked of pine sol and air freshener, like Mom had gone on a cleaning rampage. "Diana, honey, welcome home," Mom said, giving me a quick side hug before rushing back to the kitchen. "Your brother's bringing his new girlfriend over for dinner. I want everything to be perfect." And just like that, I knew. Nothing had changed. I was still an afterthought in my own home. Over the next few days, I watched in disbelief as my parents fawned over Jack and his girlfriend, Melissa. Jack had landed some hotshot job at an investment firm, and suddenly he was the second coming of Christ. Mom turned into some kind of demented hotel maid, making Jack and Melissa's bed, doing their laundry, even cleaning Jack's room like he was still a kid. It didn't take long for me to realize I had no place in that house anymore. My childhood bedroom turned into a home office for Jack. My spot at the dinner table now occupied by Melissa. It was like I'd been erased, replaced by this new, improved version of our family. One night, after another dinner of watching my parents hang on Jack's every word, Dad cornered me in the kitchen. "Diana," he said, his tone all businesslike, "your mother and I think it's time you found your own place. You're a college graduate now. Time to spread your wings, kiddo." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were kicking me out, plain and simple. And the way Dad was talking, like he was doing me some big favor? It made my blood boil. That night, I called Grandma Rose. She's Dad's mom, and probably the only person in our family with any sense left. "Oh, sweetie," she said when I told her what happened, her voice warm and comforting even through the phone. "You come stay with me. I've got plenty of room." I was tempted, believe me. Grandma's place was like a palace, but I knew I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. "Thanks, Grandma, but I think I need to do this on my own," I said. There was a pause, then Grandma said, "I'm proud of you, Diana. Tell you what, I'll help you with the first month's rent. Consider it a graduation gift." I tried to refuse, but Grandma wouldn't hear of it. A week later, I was moving into my own apartment. It wasn't much, a studio with a kitchenette and a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. I landed a job at a local marketing firm. Entry-level stuff, but it was a start. I threw myself into work, trying to build a life that was completely separate from the circus my family had become. Months went by. I'd get the occasional text from Mom, usually something generic like "hope you're doing well." It was like they'd written me off as a lost cause. Jack was their golden ticket to a cushy retirement, and I was just an afterthought. But life has a funny way of surprising you. 6 months after I moved out, I met Kyle. He was different. He listened when I talked. He cared about my dreams, my fears. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. We dated for 6 months, and it was like a whirlwind. Before I knew it, we were moving in together. And then, one night over Chinese takeout, Kyle got down on one knee right there in our tiny living room. The next challenge was introducing Kyle to my parents. The moment my parents found out Kyle had his own apartment and a good job at a tech startup, their eyes lit up like Christmas trees. "So, Kyle," Dad said, leaning forward in his chair, "tell us more about your job. What exactly does your company do?" Kyle launched into an explanation about app development and future market projections. I watched in amazement as my parents hung on his every word, nodding and smiling. "And what are your plans for the future?" Mom chimed in. "Career-wise, I mean." Kyle talked about his 5-year plan, his goals to move up in the company. With each word, I could see my parents warming up to him more and more. Finally, Dad clapped Kyle on the shoulder. "Well, son, I think you'll make a fine addition to our family." I couldn't believe it. After years of feeling like I couldn't do anything right in their eyes, suddenly I was back in their good graces. All because I'd found a man they approved of. Mom called me the next day, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Diana, honey, your father and I have been talking," she said. "We want to help with the wedding. We'll cover half the costs and handle all the organizing. We want your day to be perfect." I felt a warmth spreading through my chest. Finally, after all these years, my parents were treating me like I mattered. Like I was equal to Jack. I should have known it was too good to be true. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning. Mom took charge, booking the fanciest restaurant in town for the reception. Dad handled the guest list, making sure to invite every distant relative and business associate he could think of. I threw myself into it all, picking out flowers, tasting cakes, and finally finding the perfect dress. It was a beautiful thing, all lace and satin that made me feel like a princess. Then, 2 weeks before the big day, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Diana, honey," she said, her voice tight. "I'm sorry, but we're going to have to cancel the wedding." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What? Mom, what are you talking about?" "It's your brother," she said, her voice breaking. "He and Melissa had a huge fight. She left him. He's absolutely devastated." I gripped the phone tighter, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. "Okay, but what does that have to do with my wedding?" "Well, we can't very well have a big celebration when your brother is so depressed, can we? It wouldn't be right." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, the wedding is in 2 weeks. Everything's booked. People have made travel plans. How can you just cancel it?" "Now, Diana," Dad's voice came on the line. "When did this become a conference call? Don't be selfish. Your brother needs us right now." "Selfish?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How am I being selfish? This is my wedding." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Dad snapped. "Stop being so dramatic. You can get married any time. Your brother needs us now." "But that's final, Diana," Mom said, her voice cold. "You'll need to let your guests know." And then they hung up. They canceled my wedding and hung up on me. I stood there, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. How was I going to tell Kyle? His parents? All our friends who had booked flights and hotels? More than that, how could my parents do this to me? After all the promises, all the plans, they were throwing it all away because Jack got dumped. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Just when I thought things were finally going my way, just when I thought my parents finally saw me as an equal to Jack, they pulled the rug out from under me. I don't know how long I sat on that floor, my mind reeling. But eventually, anger started to replace the shock. I grabbed my phone and dialed Jack's number. He picked up on the third ring. "What?" He sounded irritated, like I'd interrupted something important. "Jack, what the hell is going on? Mom and Dad just canceled my wedding because of you. They said Melissa left you and you're devastated." "I messed up, okay?" His voice was flat, emotionless. "I cheated on her. she found out. I want Melissa back. That's all there is to it. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Okay, but what about my wedding? Mom and Dad canceled everything because of you. There was a rustling sound, like he was shrugging. Not my problem, sis. Wasn't planning on coming anyway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you don't care if I get married or not? Hey, do what you want. Just leave me out of it. And then he hung up. Just like that. I stared at my phone, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could he be so callous? And how could my parents cancel my wedding over this? I dialed my parents' number, my hands shaking with anger. Mom picked up. Diana, we told you. I just talked to Jack, I cut her off. Did you know he cheated on Melissa? That's why she left. There was a pause. Now, Diana, Dad's voice came on the line. When did this become a habit? Your brother is going through a difficult time. We need to support him. Support him? I was practically yelling now. What about supporting me? It's my wedding. That's enough, Dad roared. The wedding is off. Ended discussion. And once again, they hung up on me. I screamed in frustration, throwing my phone onto the couch. How could they do this? How could they be so blind? In desperation, I called the one person I knew would be on my side, Grandma Rose. Grandma, I said, my voice breaking. I need your help. I poured out the whole story, the canceled wedding, Jack's cheating, my parents' refusal to listen. Grandma listened quietly, only speaking when I'd finished. Oh, my dear, she said, her voice full of sympathy. What a mess. Don't you worry, I'll talk some sense into them. I felt a glimmer of hope. If anyone could get through to my parents, it was Grandma Rose. But an hour later, my phone rang. It was Grandma, and she sounded defeated. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, she said. I tried, but they wouldn't budge. Your father said they've already canceled the restaurant and notified the guests. As I hung up, I felt despair. My parents had made their choice clear, Jack would always come first, no matter what. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. I dragged myself out of bed, still feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. When I opened the door, there stood Grandma Rose, holding a tray of coffee and pastries. Thought you could use some breakfast, dear, she said, bustling past me into the apartment. As I sat across from her at my tiny kitchen table, clutching a mug of coffee like a lifeline, Grandma dropped another bombshell. I found out why your parents really canceled your wedding, she said, her voice tight with anger. I braced myself. Why? They bought Jack an expensive vacation package for two. And a brand new sports car. Grandma's lips were pressed into a thin line. Apparently, Jack's supposed to give Melissa the keys on the trip. Some grand gesture to win her back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? But, how can they afford all that? Grandma reached across the table, taking my hand. They can't, dear. That's why they canceled your wedding. They're using that money to pay for Jack's apology gifts. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. All this time, I'd thought maybe, just maybe, they had Jack's best interests at heart. But this was beyond the pale. They're paying for his wedding too, Grandma continued, her voice soft. If Melissa takes him back, that is. They simply don't have the money for two weddings. So they chose his, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Grandma nodded, her eyes full of sympathy. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. But listen to me. You deserve your special day. So I'm going to pay for your wedding. I burst into tears then, overwhelmed by her kindness. Grandma moved around the table, wrapping me in a hug. No, she said, stroking my hair. No more tears. We've got a wedding to plan. Over the next few hours, we made calls, sent emails, and generally worked our asses off. I sent out a mass email to all the guests, apologizing for the confusion and announcing the new wedding date, 4 weeks from now. Kyle was amazing through it all. When I told him what happened, he didn't get angry or frustrated. He just held me and said, "As long as I'm marrying you, I don't care about the details." His parents were equally supportive. Kyle's mom even offered to help with the planning, saying, "We're family now, dear. We stick together." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Grandma, Kyle, his parents, and I threw ourselves into wedding planning. We found a new venue, rebooked the caterer, and somehow managed to pull everything together. As the wedding day approached, I felt a mix of excitement and sadness. Excitement for my future with Kyle, sadness for the family I seemed to be leaving behind. My parents hadn't reached out once since canceling the original wedding. It was like I'd ceased to exist for them. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more twisted, my mom decided to kick it up a notch. My phone started blowing up with calls from her, but I wasn't in the mood to hear more bullshit, so I let them go to voicemail. Big mistake. "Diana," her voice crackled through the speaker, dripping with venom, "I know what you're doing with your grandmother. Stop it right now. You have no right to turn her against us." I deleted the message, rolling my eyes. But they kept coming. "Your father and I raised you better than this. How dare you manipulate an old woman for her money?" Delete. "If you don't stop this right now, you'll regret it. We're your parents, Diana. Remember that." Delete, delete, delete. A few days later, Kyle called me into the living room, his face pale. "Babe, you need to see this." He handed me his phone, open to Facebook. There, in all its glory, was a post from my mom. My jaw dropped as I read. "It breaks my heart to say this, but my daughter Diana has shown her true colors. She's manipulating her poor, confused grandmother for money. She doesn't care about family, only herself. How did we raise such a selfish child?" I couldn't believe my eyes. "Are you kidding me?" I muttered, scrolling through the comments. It got worse. My dad had chimed in, "Diana has always been jealous of her brother's success. Now she's trying to turn the family against us. Shameful." I felt sick. How could they do this? How could they lie about me like this? An hour later, I was at Grandma's house, watching in awe as she set up her iPad. "Your parents think I don't know how to use the internet," she chuckled. "Let's show them how wrong they are." We spent the next hour filming a video. Grandma spoke directly to the camera, her voice clear and strong. "I'm Rose Thompson, and I'm here to set the record straight. I'm of sound mind, and I'm disgusted by the lies my son and daughter-in-law are spreading about my granddaughter, Diana. She hasn't manipulated me or tried to turn me against anyone. She's a kind, loving young woman who deserves better than this treatment." She went on to detail everything, how my parents canceled my wedding for Jack's benefit, how they'd chosen him over me time and time again. By the end, I was in tears. "I love both my grandchildren," Grandma concluded, "but I won't stand by and watch one be mistreated. Shame on you, Robert and Linda. You should be ashamed of yourselves." We posted the video that night. Within hours, it had hundreds of comments and shares. The family was in an uproar. "Cousin Sarah, I knew Diana wouldn't do something like that." "Great Aunt Mildred, I always said Robert was too soft on that boy of his." "Uncle Jim, Rob, Linda, this is low. Real low. You need to make this right." But for every supportive comment, there was one defending my parents. The family was split down the middle, arguing back and forth in the comments section. As I sat there, watching the chaos unfold on my screen, I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. On one hand, the truth was finally out there. On the other, I was watching my family tear itself apart. The next day, my phone rang. It was Uncle Mike, Mom's brother. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself for more family drama. "Diana, it's Uncle Mike." His voice was warm, not at all what I expected. "I saw the video. I had no idea things were so bad." I felt a lump in my throat. Yeah, it's been pretty rough. There was a pause, then he said, "Listen, kiddo. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now, but I want you to know I'm on your side. And, well, if your dad's not coming to the wedding, I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle. If you want, that is." I couldn't hold back the tears. "Uncle Mike, thank you. Yes, I'd love that." We talked for a while longer, catching up and making plans. When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Maybe, just maybe, things were looking up. As Kyle and I finalized the guest list, I stared at the names of my parents and Jack. With a deep breath, I crossed them out. Kyle's parents were amazingly supportive. When we told them about the guest list, Kyle's mom hugged me tight. "Your family now, Diana. We've got your back." The big day arrived faster than I could have imagined. We'd scaled back our plans, opting for a smaller, more intimate ceremony. As I stood in the bridal suite, Grandma Rose helping me with my veil, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't expected. The ceremony was perfect. Uncle Mike beamed with pride as he walked me down the aisle. Kyle's face when he saw me. I'll never forget that look as long as I live. We said our vows, exchanged rings, and just like that, we were married. At the reception, surrounded by the people who truly cared about us, I felt happier than I had in months. We danced, laughed, and celebrated love, not just mine and Kyle's, but the love of a family that chooses to support each other. As the night was winding down, Grandma Rose clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. She stood, a bit shaky on her feet, but her voice was strong and clear. "I have an announcement to make," she said, smiling at me. "Diana, you've shown incredible strength and grace through all of this. You're the granddaughter I always dreamed of having. So, I want everyone here to know that I've decided to make Diana my sole heir. It's not much, but it's my way of showing her how proud I am." The room erupted in applause and cheers. I sat there, stunned, tears streaming down my face. Kyle squeezed my hand, grinning. I stood up, hugging Grandma tight. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "I love you so much." "I love you too, dear," she said, patting my cheek. "Now go on, enjoy your party. It's your day." As I looked around the room at all the smiling faces, Kyle, his parents, Uncle Mike, and all the friends and family who'd stood by me, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was my family now. Not perfect, maybe, but real and loving. The post-wedding bliss lasted about a week, before all hell broke loose. I was curled up on the couch with Kyle, flipping through our wedding photos, when my phone exploded with notifications. "What the?" I muttered, opening Facebook to find my wall plastered with angry posts from my parents. "How dare you turn my own mother against me?" Dad's post screamed. "We'll contest this in court." Mom's was even worse, "You manipulative little witch. You've stolen our inheritance." I felt sick to my stomach. Before I could do anything, my phone rang. It was Grandma Rose. "Don't you worry about a thing, dear," she said before I could even say hello. "I'm handling this." And boy, did she handle it. The next day, I got a call from Dad. He sounded defeated. "Diana," he said, his voice rough. "Your grandmother, she's threatening to take us to court. Says she's got evidence of harassment or something. Tell her not to do anything rash." I savored the moment for a second before responding. "I think you should tell her that yourself, Dad. And while you're at it, maybe apologize for all the crap you've been putting me through." I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Finally, truly over. The next few months were like something out of a dream. Kyle and I settled into married life, figuring out our routines and quirks. We had dinner with Grandma Rose every Sunday, filling her in on our week and listening to her stories about her younger days. "You know," she said one evening, a mischievous glint in her eye, "I ever tell you about the time I snuck out to see Elvis in concert?" Kyle and I exchanged glances, grinning. No, Grandma, I said, leaning in. Do tell. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were arguments about whose turn it was to do the dishes, stressful days at work, all the normal stuff. But coming home to Kyle, knowing I had a family that truly loved and supported me, it made everything else seem manageable. We saw Uncle Mike and his family for holidays, slowly rebuilding those family connections. It was different, but in many ways, it was better. More genuine. As for my parents and Jack, well, karma has a way of catching up with people. Despite all the money they'd thrown at Jack's grand gesture, Melissa wasn't having it. Last I heard, she'd moved out of state, wanting nothing to do with him. Jack was still living at home, having lost his golden position at an investment company and jumping from job to job. Mom and Dad were still enabling him, still treating him like the golden child. But now, they were doing it without Grandma's money to fall back on. Part of me felt sad for them. They'd lost so much, their daughter, their mother, their dignity, all because they couldn't see past their own favoritism. But a bigger part of me felt free. I no longer had to live up to their impossible standards or compete for their love. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe someday, my parents would come around. Maybe they wouldn't. But I knew one thing for sure, whatever came next, I had the strength and the support to handle it.